Chicken Tikka Masala, super tasty grilled tandoori chicken that's tossed in a rich and spicy tomato gravy. It's not the first thing you think about when cooking on the grill, but it should be. In most restaurants, it's usually served with a side of rice or naan, but you can totally get creative and throw it on some polenta or pasta. Either way, it's guaranteed to be a hit. Full disclosure, if you do this the way that most recipes tell you, it's a huge pain. But I found a really simple way to cook this on the grill that's a lot faster. Let me show you. Also, the first part of this recipe is prepping some super tasty grilled tandoori chicken, which is even good by itself. So I say make twice as much chicken as you need. Keep half of the chicken to eat plain and toss the other half in some gravy. You've got two dishes in the time it'll take you to make one. Okay, so the first thing to consider is the chicken. If you want to cook this quickly, you'll need to use skinless boneless chicken. Thigh or breast. It doesn't matter, but anything else will take way too long to marinate. I use chicken thighs, they're tastier and more forgiving to cook than breast. I'm not going to do anything to these except trim off the fat and make some shallow cuts. You don't need to do this, but it helps the marinade penetrate deeper. Now into a bowl they go. Normally, people will make the marinade separately and then just add it in, but I'm not looking to do more dishes later, so I'm just going to put everything in one bowl. This marinade consists of 4 parts: ground spices, aromatics like ginger and garlic, acids, and herbs. Let's start off with the ground spices. I use tandoori powder and garam masala powder. I'm using a bottled tandoori powder. For about 2 pounds of chicken, I'll add 4 teaspoons. I'll also add 2 teaspoons of garam masala. As a general rule of thumb, use about 2 teaspoons of tandoori powder and 1 teaspoon of garam masala per pound of chicken for tandoori marinades. Okay, so next up, the aromatics. I added about 1 tablespoon of ground ginger and 1 tablespoon of ground garlic. I also added 1 tablespoon of salt. This is a pretty salty marinade, but it's super important. Without going too much into the science of it, when you marinate meat in any sort of salty liquid, the myosin proteins in the meat dissolve and loosen up, which allows for the flavors in the marinade to penetrate deeper, and it also keeps the meat juicier, which is all good stuff. Okay, so now for the acids, I use the juice of 1 lime, but you can also just use lemon juice. I also added about half a cup of Greek yogurt. The acids help tenderize the meat, but you don't want to overdo it. Keep the chicken in there for no more than a few hours or you'll end up with chicken ceviche. This marinade also calls for about a quarter cup of oil, but I used half a cup of mayo instead. Because we're grilling the chicken, the mayo will help the marinade stay on better and also brown the chicken way better than oil. Okay, so next up is the herbs. So one of the secret ingredients that most recipes don't tell you to use is dried fenugreek leaves. You've probably never heard of this, but I bet you've tasted it if you had Indian takeout. I'm not gonna lie, if you don't have an Asian grocery nearby, this is gonna be really hard to find. So I ordered myself a box from Amazon. It's dried so it'll keep forever, and I put a link for this in the description if you want to pick one up for yourself. Okay, so now mix it all together and let the chicken marinate while we're going to get the grill going. It usually takes about 30 minutes or so to clean up my grill, get the charcoal going, and get the grill up to temp, which should be enough time for the flavors of the marinade to start to penetrate the chicken. For this cook, I'll be using my vortex, which is this metal cone shaped thingy in the middle of my grill. When the charcoal gets really hot, I can put a cast iron pan or wok in the center and cook right over, or put the grill lid on and use the heat convection inside to cook everything on the outer grates. I'm also using lump charcoal because they get way hotter than briquettes, and if I need more heat, I can always throw some more in. Once the grill was at about 450 degrees and the grates are nice and hot, I put the chicken on. While the chicken cooks, I cut the onions. I used about 2 medium-sized onions. I'll need these later on when I make the sauce. I used a mandolin for this. For me, it's the fastest way to get thinly sliced onions. Mine also has this little catch bowl thing, so I don't have to take out another cutting board. Also, for most authentic chicken tikka recipes, use red onions, but if all that you have are yellow or white, it'll be fine as well. After about 15 minutes, the chicken is almost fully cooked, so I flipped it over and let them go for another 5 minutes. I also put the center grate back to heat up so I could see the chicken once it's done. Once they were done, I quickly threw them over the center grate for a few seconds to get those coveted grill marks. A lot of people think that chicken tikka masala and butter chicken are the same, but they're not. Chicken tikka masala is on the spiciest side and is chunkier and has tons of sauteed onions. There's also much less or no butter at all, unlike butter chicken, which, as you guessed, has a lot of butter and is usually a very smooth sauce, and it's also much milder. Okay, so now let these rest for a bit and let's move on to the sauce. I started by putting a large cast iron pan on the center grate. Try to avoid using enamel coated cast iron pans. The enamel may not be able to withstand the heat from direct exposure to hot charcoals. Once the pan was hot, I added about 3 tablespoons of vegetable oil. You can add more or less depending on the size of the pan. Just try to cover the bottom of the pan in oil. Then I added the onions and cooked them down until they developed a deep brown color. If you find that the grill is too hot, you can either raise the pan off the grate to get the temperature down a bit. I used a grill rack to get it a few inches higher for this. I then added 1 tablespoon of grated ginger and 1 tablespoon of grated garlic. I let this cook for about a minute or so until you could start to smell the ginger and garlic. Now it's time to toast the spices. I tossed in 1 tablespoon of Kashmiri chili powder, 1 tablespoon of coriander powder, 2 teaspoons of garam masala, and 1 teaspoon of cumin powder. The Kashmiri powder is what gives this a nice bright red color. If you don't have this, you can use paprika instead, but don't use any spicy or strong flavored chili powder. Now let the spices toast for a few seconds and then immediately add 2 pounds of pureed tomatoes. I use fresh tomatoes, but you can also use canned tomatoes, but you may need to adjust how much cream you add at the end to balance the higher acidity that canned tomatoes usually have. Now we'll cook this all down until all the water evaporates and the tomatoes start to caramelize. This is where cooking on the grill comes in handy. Because I'm cooking directly over blazing hot charcoals, I can get the pan way hotter than I can with my electric stove. So, reducing all of this liquid, which usually takes about half an hour, can get done in a few minutes, as long as I keep stirring to prevent anything from sticking and burning. By the end, it should almost take on like a relish-like consistency. What we have at this point is basically tikka sauce concentrate. It's delicious but super potent, so let's add back about 1 cup of water to form this back into a sauce. Now I added in the chicken that I had cooked earlier. It's fully cooked, so you're just adding it in to warm it up and to allow it to absorb the sauce. Now add in half a cup of heavy cream and 2 tablespoons more of dried fenugreek leaves. Now mix this well. Don't leave the sauce on the heat for more than a minute or so more, or you'll kill the flavor of the fenugreek leaves. Also, if you want it to taste exactly the same as restaurant style, add about 2 teaspoons of sugar to this. I actually prefer my chicken tikka more on the spicier and tangier side, so I skip this. Look at that. Glossy, rich, roasted, sweet, sour. This thing has all the flavors. Now put some rice on a plate, chicken and sauce on the side or on the top. You do you. And because I'm one of those people who don't perceive cilantro as soap, I added a few leaves of cilantro for some color. Now give this a taste. Now this does not taste like a homemade take on restaurant style chicken tikka masala. This tastes exactly like restaurant style chicken tikka masala. And best of all, you can make it really easily at home on your grill. So try this out.